I'm going to go ahead and get started then so that we can just buzz through this. Let's see. All right, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about how Social Security defines disability. And that the way that they define it is that somebody is not able to engage in any substantial gainful activity, or what they call SGA. And if they cannot engage in any substantial gainful activity because of a medically determinable physical or mental impairment that is either expected to result in death or expected to last for at least 12 months. That's their definition of disability. So you could be very disabled, physically or mentally impaired, but working at a substantial level, then they would not define you as disabled. Okay, so that's how they define it. Okay. Sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties here. I clicked on something, and let me get rid of this stuff. That will help a lot. Okay. For some reason, let me. All right, is that better for you guys? I didn't have it on the presenter view before, so. Okay, so the one thing that I like to tell people is that the SGA, or the substantial gainful activity, it's a Social Security decision. They're the ones that decide what SGA is. And even though it is a number, it's not a number. People will say to me, how much can I make? And I have to always say, well, that depends, because there are work incentives that might make a difference in the number, the SGA number. And we're going to kind of go through that very quickly just to give you kind of an overview and an idea. But for 2020, the number that Social Security starts with is $1,260 for an individual. This is what they call substantial gainful activity, and it's higher for a blind or visually impaired individual. So gainful work activity is work that's performed for pay or profit. It's work of a nature generally performed for pay or profit, so that could include volunteer work, say as an office person, a receptionist, or somebody who's a clerk, or any number of types of volunteer work that also might be paid for. It might be considered a paid position anywhere else. And if you're doing that kind of work on a really regular basis, regular and consistent, then Social Security is going to count that as work. Even if you're not being paid for it, they're going to say, well, nationally people are paid an average of this amount for that type of work. Therefore, you could be making this amount of work, and therefore you are over SGA, and we don't consider you disabled anymore, right? So you do have to consider that. Now, volunteer work that is very sporadic and not of a very consistent or ongoing nature is probably okay, but it's just important for people to know. Sometimes people volunteer because they're trying to avoid that. Maybe they want to see if they like that kind of work, or if they can make, you know, can actually work at that level. And so they do that first just to try it. There are actually work incentives that can help you do that too, though. And then also any work that's intended for profit, whether or not profit is realized. So sometimes hours spent in self-employment, even if you don't make any money, could also be counted for SGA. And that is only true under the SSDI rules and not under SSI. And again, I don't want you guys to try to memorize this, because this is the type of thing that we have people in the state who are certified to do, they're the ones that they know this stuff inside and out. What I really want you guys to get from tonight is to go, oh, that might apply to me. I should probably go see them. I should get a benefits summary analysis because that could apply. All right. So that's really, I don't want you to try to have any in-depth or understanding. People go to training for over a week. And then they have assessments and testing that takes place over about 6 weeks. They have ongoing oversight and review of their work for a year. I mean, it's a pretty in-depth process to become certified to do this type of work. And so, and the reason for that is that it's often easy to confuse the rules or to forget that there's a work incentive out there that you might be able to use, and to know the rules that go with each and every work incentive and each benefit. So that's why I don't want you to feel like you need to know this stuff, okay? So there are some tools that Social Security uses when they're trying to determine if someone's work represents SGA level, substantial gainful activity. And those tools are called subsidy and special conditions, impairment related work expenses, income averaging, and unsuccessful work attempt. So those are some of the tools, 4 basic tools that they have in their toolbox when they're looking at the level of work and trying to decide if it's SGA level or not, okay? So they will begin by calculating the gross earnings that are earned in a month, and they do that by the pay stubs that you submit or report to them every month. Then they're going to look at any supports on the job, which could be subsidies, special conditions, maybe some out-of-pocket expenses or IRWs, impairment-related work expenses. And they're going to look at self-employment, and they're going to consider the hours that were put into that work, not just the amount of money that was made, in some cases, not all cases. So there are 2 separate and distinct Social Security disability programs. There's the Title II that we talked about, Social Security Disability Insurance, and under that one would also be the Child Disability Benefit, where a child is receiving payment from a parent's check, right? And then there's Supplemental Security Income. So we're going to talk about each one of those programs separately, because each one of the programs actually have separate rules. And I am going to really just be whizzing through this because I'm really keeping track of time here so that I can give you guys time for questions at the end as well. And I see that Kristen Smith has her hand up. Was that just in answering a question previously, or do you have a question? No? Okay. All right. So Social Security Disability Insurance is an insurance program. You have to have a medical disability and be unemployed or earning less than that SGA amount. And you have to have worked previously in a Social Security tax covered job or self-employment where you paid into the program for so many quarters before you actually then are qualified to receive a disability payment from that program. There is no resource limit on this particular program. Oops, sorry. Okay, and under that Social Security Disability Insurance is the Child Disability Benefits, or CBD, as well as Disabled Widower Benefits. And so the rules are the same. So when people, when I talk about SSDI, I'm also talking about those programs as well. Under SSDI, the work incentives that they offer, they have a kind of a phase 1, which is called the trial work period, or TWP. And that's 9 months of income that's over the trial work period level, which for this year is $880. Now understand that these numbers, almost all of them change every year. They go up just a little bit, okay? During the trial work period time, if you earn over $880, you still continue to receive your full SSDI check. The 9 months don't have to be consecutive, and in Alaska, we have people who work seasonally. They work in tourism, they work in fishing, maybe in forestry, and so they might work for 3 months and then not work all winter, and then the following year they might work another 3 months, Any month that they work over that 880 counts as 1 month of trial work period. Once they reach 9 months of that, then they move on to the next phase, okay? The amount is taken off of gross earnings, and you can't use any other work incentives when you're in this trial work period phase. So no other work incentives apply. It's a 5-year rolling window. Net earnings for self-employment are what are considered here, and they have a special formula that they use to figure out the net earnings for self-employment, and we're not going to get into that tonight. That is something that when we do benefits counseling, we actually verify your benefits. We look at your level of work, and then we give you a report that is specific to your individual circumstance. So the information I'm giving you tonight is general information. Some of it may apply, some of it may not apply, okay? Once you've used up your trial work period, then you're going to move into phase 2, or the extended period of eligibility, also known as EPE. Now, once you get into this period, these months are consecutive. It's sort of like a clock that, you know, it just keeps ticking. Whether you earn over SGA in that month or not, it just starts counting, and it goes through for 36 months. So those months are consecutive. SGA determination is made for each month, and a full SSDI check is received any month that you earn under SGA. And SSDI is a benefit that you either get your whole check or you don't get any of it, okay? So there will be no check in the months that earnings are over SGA. So when you report your wages, if you earned over SGA, then you're going to see in the following month or two, you're going to see you're not going to get a check because of having earned over SGA. There is a little bit of a time lag delay in there, so you always have to take that into consideration. And then subsidies and IRWIs can be factored into the SGA determination if applicable. So remember I talked about those 4 tools that the Social Security has in their toolbox, and one of those tools is subsidies and one is IRWIs. They can use those tools to see if you actually really earned at that SGA level or not. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. We're going to get to that right here, the next slide. Okay, so subsidies are when the employer provides extra accommodations, extra supervision, or other special assistance because of the beneficiary's disability. And special conditions are when a worker receives supports or services from someone other than the employer. Could be a job coach that potentially subsidizes the worker's ability to perform SGA, right? So that can be provided by a third party. So I guess just an example of that would be if your employer allows you to take extra breaks that the other employees who do the same exact work that you do don't get to take, right? But because of your disability, then the employer accommodates that. So Social Security puts a value on that. They ask the employer about what % of your work time or your wages do those extra accommodations value? What do they value those at, right? And so then what they might do is they might take that value. Let's say that they give you a couple extra breaks and the employer says, well, you know, that's probably at about, I don't know, $50, or they might have a percentage, right? It could also be if they provide extra accommodation where maybe you aren't able to bend over to get things on a bottom shelf. Maybe you're working at a job where you're stocking shelves and you're just not able to get down to those lower shelves because of your disability, but you can stock all the shelves, you know, that are at regular level or even a little above your head. So you may do less stocking and the employer might count that or value that at maybe 10% of your job. So then Social Security is going to look at your gross wages. They're going to take 10% and they're going to subtract that from your wages. Does that make sense? You can nod your head. I can see some of you. So yes, okay. And so that's how they figure out, when I say that SGA is not just a number, that's what I mean. It might start out being a number, right? It might start out being $12.90, but then Social Security and the employer may say, oh, well, we've got these accommodations, or we have somebody helping the person, and that makes up a certain percentage of their job. And so then they subtract that amount from the wages, and now maybe suddenly they're no longer earning at SGA, right? Maybe they're now under that level. So that's how those tools can be used, and why people don't necessarily need to limit their wages or how much they earn, because they may have a subsidy or special condition. Now, these aren't used during trial work period, so just keep that in mind. Nothing else is used during trial work period. Okay, another work incentive for SSDI is called extended Medicare coverage. And that is when Medicare could continue to be received at least 93 consecutive months, hospital insurance Part A, the supplemental medical insurance Part B, and prescription drug coverage Part D. That starts the month after the last month of your trial work period. So basically it starts when your EPE starts. It's usually invisible. Most people don't know that it started. It's just, it continues. Your Medicare just continues. And you can continue to receive it at least 93 months, which is like 7 years and 9 months, but oftentimes you can continue to receive it indefinitely. There may be, you may begin to have a premium, especially at the end of the 93 months. So there are some things that could happen in there, but it's a small premium and you would continue to receive that Medicare coverage. Phase 3 of the SSDI work incentives is that, let's say somebody is working and they're earning and they're doing really well, and they get to the point after their 36 months of that extended period of eligibility. Once that 36 months is over, if they earn over SGA, then they're terminated from the program, right? And that could be fine. That could be completely fine with that person. They know that they're continuing to receive Medicare. Just because they're terminated doesn't mean they lose their Medicare, right? That's that extended period of Medicare coverage. They're earning a good check. They're happy. And then something happens, and suddenly they're no longer able to work at that level. So this phase 3 is called Expedited Reinstatement. You don't have to go through that whole process of reapplying or doing a new application. This is an expedited reinstatement. If the person's earning under SGA, then the benefits can be resumed. Usually what happens is they start you back up on benefits for about 6 months to give them time to review your case, just to make sure that you really still are eligible for the benefit. Okay, so that's just a safety net if cash benefits stop because of work and then you find that you need them again. And that happens if the work stops within 5 years. So it's a pretty good long period of time to determine, whether you're able to work or not work at that level. Okay, so let's just take a quick pause here and see if there's any questions about that, that program. And Alex, I'll let you monitor the chat. Actually, let me stop sharing my screen. There we go. And then I can see a little better. Okay.
I'm still here. I just had to move.
Okay, all right.
I didn't see anything specific in the chat box.
Okay. And if people want to ask a question too, you don't have to put it in the chat box. You can also unmute and ask a question. That's fine. Yeah. Okay. So that is that the SSDI disability benefit and the work incentives that go along with that. And we did talk about subsidies and special conditions. I didn't go into detail about impairment related work expenses. And that's because I'm going to do that in a little bit. Most of the, so the work rules for both of those benefits, SSDI and SSI, are different. They're completely different. The work incentives are different, but there is one, and that is the impairment related work expenses that is actually able to be used for both. And that's the only one. So I'm going to talk about that one, but I just haven't talked about it yet. So know that we will go into detail for that. Okay.
Rachel, just a clarifying question. I don't know if you see that in the chat box.
Yes, I
Okay.
just saw that. So what I just went over now was just for the SSDI Social Security Disability Insurance benefit. I'm going to go into the SSI benefits and work incentives next. So Rachel, you're correct. It didn't apply to those, didn't apply to SSI, but we're going to cover that next. Okay. Okay, and I do see, we are going to talk a little bit about the ABLE as well. So like I said, we're going to go through everything fairly quickly, but I think we'll be able to get through it all. So I'm going to share my screen again, and we're going to go ahead and continue. Okay, oh, I always have to move this. Okay, so SSI, or the Supplemental Security Income Program, is a federal and state needs-based program for people with disabilities. And for the eligibility for SSI, you have to have a medical disability and be unemployed or earning under that SGA level. For SSI, though, you also have a resource limit. You cannot have more than $2,000 in resources for an individual or $3,000 for a couple. They'll allow you to have a car, and they'll allow you to have a house. You can have a burial account and or plot. Those are allowed as well. But you can't have, like, let's say, 2 cars, and one of the cars is worth $5,000 or $20,000. They would consider that a resource, and you would not be eligible. You can't own a house and a plot of land, for example. That's gonna be counted as a resource, and that would make you ineligible for this benefit. So the federal benefit rate for 2020 is $783 a month for an individual and $1,175 a month for a couple. The reason that I even mentioned the couple is because sometimes we have clients who both clients receive SSI and they want to get married, or they want to live together as though they're married. Then that means that they would stop receiving their individual benefit, and they would only receive $1,175 a month for a couple. So it's substantially less. And so I'm not saying don't move in together and don't get married, because, but it's important that you know that that's what's going to happen so that you can plan for it. The reason for that, the thinking behind it, is that if you are living together as a couple or married, you have one rent that you're sharing, right? You have utilities are being shared, everything is shared, so therefore you don't need the individual rate. Well, I beg to differ, but nobody asked me when they set those numbers. In SSDI, there is actually a waiting period for Medicare. If you're familiar with that program at all, you know that it's a 24-month or 2-year waiting period. There's no waiting period. And then I think a 5-month waiting period on the check. There's no waiting period after the onset of disability for the SSI program. It starts immediately, and the eligibility is for Medicaid, which is a different medical insurance program than Medicare. And there's no waiting period for that, for Medicaid. Also, a lot of people who are eligible for SSI are also eligible for adult public assistance, which is our Alaska State Supplement, and also known as APA. So that might be an eligibility thing as well. There are 3 categories of income that Social Security counts when determining eligibility for SSI, and one is unearned income. So if you receive SSDI or a child disability benefit or veterans benefits or something like that, that's considered unearned income. And then they also consider earned income, which are wages or food or shelter in lieu of wages, or profit from self-employment. Those are earned wages that they would count. They do exclude and exempt things like food stamps, government rental assistance, energy assistance, some scholarships. So there are some things that they exempt as well that they don't count. To me, supplemental security income is a lot easier to sort through. It's a little simpler, I think. If you have unearned income, they have a general exclusion of $20, okay? And they exclude the first $20 of unearned income. If you don't have any unearned income, then they will also exclude that $20 from any earned income that you have, okay? So it can be used in either place, but it can only be used once. So if you have unearned income, it's used there first. If it's not used there, then it can be used for the next work incentive, which is called earned income exclusion. And for that one, the first $65 of earnings is excluded, and it could potentially also have the $20 general income exclusion excluded from your wages. So you could actually have $85 excluded from your earnings, and that's not really a big deal, right? Those first two are just not a big deal. But the third one is the 1/2 disregard, and that's where you subtract those exclusions, whatever applies, and then from your earnings, not from your unearned income, but from your earned income, you get to divide the remainder by 2, and that's all that Social Security counts. Okay, so that's a pretty powerful work incentive. Unlike SSDI, with SSI, you could get some of your check. You could, you know, if you're working and they're counting your income, you might only get part of your check. So with SSDI, remember I said you either get all of your check or none of your check. With SSI, you could get some of your check. They're gonna adjust your check depending on your income. Now, I wasn't gonna go through these calculations tonight just because they are kind of time consuming. So what I might do is just go through this first one. Let's see. Yeah, I'm going to go through this first one with you, okay? I don't have a calc sheet for you guys, but what I want to say is that Sandra receives an SSI check, which is of the full amount of $783. She decides to start working, right? And so she is going to have to use the work incentives, which, if you remember correctly, was that general income doing my calculator while I'm talking, the general exclusion of $20, and then the earned income exclusion of $65. Since she doesn't have any unearned income, we get to use that $20 general income exclusion down under her earned income. Does that make sense? Does everybody follow that? So she is right off the top. So when she does that, that leaves her with $800.
You're bubbling for some reason.
$5. And then that third, I'm going to just go back here. That third work incentive, which is the 1/2 disregard, is where you divide the remainder by 2. Her wages
Larissa, I don't know if you can hear me, but your connection is cutting in and out a little bit right now.
Comes out that Social Security for any of that calculation.
Larissa, I'm not sure that we heard that last little part.
Okay.
I didn't.
Hang on one sec.
You might,
I stopped sharing because that my internet might be just being wonky right now.
yeah, it's tired at the end of the day, right?
Right. Yeah. So so I'm not sure what part you guys missed, but I'm just gonna kind of go through it again. Are you hearing me okay now? Okay, good. All right. So she was making $950. She got to subtract the $20 general income exclusion and the $65 earned income exclusion. And then she got to divide the remainder by half. So I just rounded that up to $433 is what Social Security is counting, right? So that's countable earned income. So Social Security is only going to really basically about half or a little less than half of what she makes. And so then they're going to subtract that from her SSI check, right? That's actually what I was working on. And they're going to adjust her SSI check. So she was getting 783. Okay, check of 783. They're going to subtract that countable earned income of 433. It's just going to be adjusted a little bit. And that adjusted check is $350. And you think, oh, whoa, that's a lot. Okay, but remember that she is making $950 a month. So really she's coming out money ahead, because instead of only getting $783 a month of SSI, she's getting an adjusted SSI check and earned income of $950. So she's actually bringing in $1,300 a month. So she's a lot better off to work and have an adjusted SSI check than to not work and not have as much money. Okay, so that's kind of an important part to know. People get really spooky about their check going down, but the important thing to point out is that the money they're bringing in at the end of the month is a lot more than if they were only relying on that check. There are other benefits, of course, to being out there working, and that is also that you're getting, not right now, but you're getting out of the house, you're learning new skills, and getting to interact with people. So those are also some other non-monetary benefits of working, but not losing those benefits that people depend on, and especially usually in that case, the Medicaid, right? The medical insurance part. So, okay. So can everybody hear me okay now since I stopped sharing? Okay, I think it was the screen sharing that was causing that problem. So what I'm going to do is, instead of screen sharing, I want to talk about, there we go. Okay, I'm going to just continue on, but I'm not going to share the PowerPoint. Really, the part that you needed to see is we've just done. So a couple of other things that I want to bring up. Yes, Alex?
You just have a comment in the chat box. It's related to the last example you shared. So I just wanted to make sure you saw that.
When you talk about public assistance, are you talking about adult public assistance, APA? Because the answer is yes. If they are also receiving public assistance, she would. And if the internet holds up, I'm actually going to take you to a website and show you how that would work, okay? We'll do that in a little bit. So to keep it simple, I didn't include the adult public assistance part of that equation, just because that tends to confuse things. But until that adult public, until the SSI goes to 0, the person will continue to receive APA. All right. So a couple of other work incentives. I don't know how much longer this is going to last, because Governor Dunleavy did make some comments about getting rid of this benefit, but when people get the Alaska Permanent Fund, at least what's currently true is that they do not lose their SSI. However, if you get SSI and you get the permanent fund, please do not call and report it to the 800 number, because the people on the East Coast have no clue that the state of Alaska and Social Security have an agreement to hold harmless the people who receive SSI and get a PFD check, all right? The state of Alaska at this time currently pays back Social Security for any money that they're paying to a person that they wouldn't be due ordinarily because of receiving that extra money, right? That extra permanent fund money. And I'll tell you the reason behind that. My father-in-law, who is 91 years old, was actually one of the representatives down in Juneau that helped create that permanent fund legislation way back in the 70s, late 70s, maybe 1980. And what the discussion around that was that the money from the permanent fund is a benefit that belongs to all of the state's residents, right? That's why we get it. It's a benefit that is ours. It's as if you were living in Texas on a ranch and you had an oil well and the oil companies came in and wanted to drill on your land. They pay you a stipend for being able to do that. They pay you a dividend. And that wasn't happening in Alaska. And then the people in Juneau said, well, you know, really this land belongs to all Alaskans. And so all Alaskans should get a dividend for the oil companies drilling on our land. That's how that all started. Well, it doesn't exactly benefit Alaskan residents who are on SSI, folks that have a disability or are older and are receiving SSI. It doesn't benefit them to get that dividend if they're just going to lose their SSI because of it, right? And so the state said, no, that's not really fair. They should get the benefit too. And so we will pay back Social Security for any overages so that they don't lose their SSI, but they still get to have the permanent fund dividend. So I don't know if I explained that very well, reasoning behind this. And the state has been doing that since really early on in the permanent fund dividend legislation. The other thing that I want to share with you is Alaskan native dividends. Social Security does not count them as income up to the first $2,000 that a person receives. So once they go over that, then they start counting it. But the first $2,000 they don't count. So those are two other additional work incentives that may or may not apply to a person's situation. But those are some things that we try to look at and keep in mind. Okay, so let me catch up on my slides here. I was just, so back to the permanent fund. The permanent fund is basically, there's a hold harmless provision between Social Security and the state of Alaska, and basically it's for a period of 4 months when the person receives that permanent fund money. Most people don't hold on to it that long, but if they did, then you know, it would not be counted against them, either as income or a resource. Okay. Remember I talked about impairment-related work expenses, or IRWEs? That is the one work incentive that applies both to folks who receive SSDI and SSI. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about that work incentive now. The impairment-related work expense is subtracted from the earnings before you divide by 2. Okay, so let's say you have an impairment-related work expense of, I don't know, let's say $100 a month, right? They're going to subtract that $100 from your earned wages, and then after that, the remaining amount would be divided by 2. All right, and an impairment-related work expense could be, sorry, for some reason my throat is really a little bit worn out. I'm not sure why, because I didn't have any other Zoom meetings today. Okay, okay. So to qualify as an impairment-related work expense, the expense has to be required by the disability. It has to be required in order to work. It has to be paid for by the individual and not reimbursed. Not reimbursed by a parent, mom or dad, not reimbursed by the insurance company, right? It's a non-reimbursable. And it has to be paid in the month in which the person is working. It also has to be based on a fair market price. So if somebody buys a super high-end, I don't know, wheelchair, let's say, that's not covered by medical insurance for whatever reason, and they want to count that as an IRWI, Social Security will say that they're only going to give the fair market price on that. Even if they spent triple what that might be, Social Security will only use the fair market price. So if someone has things that are considered an IRWI, and if you're curious as to whether you might have an IRWI or not, you can Google SSA and IRWI, IRWE. You can Google that, and there's actually whole sections in Social Security website that talk about what might be an IRWI and what might not be an IRWI. Okay, so that's what IRWIs are, and those are applicable to both categories. So the other thing that is applicable only to SSI are what are called blind work expenses. And those are similar to IRWIs, but a little bit more broad. They don't have to be related to the disability, and it can be any expense that's reasonably attributed to earning the income. So whereby a uniform might not be counted as an IRWI, but it could be counted as a blind work expense, right? Because the uniform isn't really needed because of the disability, but it's attributable just to earning an income. So the blind work expenses are a little broader. Another work incentive is the student earned income exclusion. It's SEIE, student earned income exclusion. And that is a really strong work incentive. I'm not going to go into the details of that right now. We don't have the time for it. I just want you to be aware of it. If you've got a student under the age of 22 who's regularly attending school, they could actually exclude up to $1,900 per month or $7,670 per year. And those are the numbers for 2020. You don't have to know them or remember them, but just know that it's a pretty big exclusion. And so if you've got kids that are still in school and they want to work during the summer and earn some money, they can. And it starts over every year. So it doesn't accumulate, it starts over every year. There are some forms you have to fill out. It's not an automatic work incentive. You actually have to fill out a form, advise Social Security in writing. There's a lot of information you have to provide them about the school and other things. So, but that is something. There's also a thing called PASS, or Plan to Achieve Self-Support. Again, these are all things that you can Google on. You can just go SSA PASS or SSA SEIE. And there are things that will pop up that will tell you a lot of information about that. So you can do that. And you can also make sure that if you're getting a benefits analysis for somebody who is an SSI recipient and you think this work incentive that you heard of, you think it might apply, you can definitely bring it up and ask the CWIC, hey, do you think this would apply? That's part of what they research, is to see what work incentives might apply to your specific case. So bringing that up to sort of flag it for them is always really helpful. Let's see, past plans, we're not going to get into that tonight. I do want to tell you about a really strong Medicaid work incentive though. For people who earn enough money that it causes their SSI check to go to zero, that's called the break-even point. And when that occurs, they can still receive Medicaid under a provision, provided they are still disabled and they still meet the resource limits test, right? They could still receive Medicaid under this provision where they're earning enough money that their SSI check goes to zero. They could still then receive, it's called 1619B. And it's a powerful, powerful work incentive. It sort of puts a lock on that Medicaid and protects it and keeps it there. It's supposed to happen automatically, but oftentimes, you know, somebody doesn't notice or think about it and they don't switch them from the normal category of Medicaid over to the 1619B, and that's not a big deal, but sometimes they put them in the wrong category of Medicaid. I've had them put them into a working disabled Medicaid buy-in before. We don't want them in that category if they're not ready to be in that category, because when they leave 1619B and go into working disabled Medicaid buy-in, they're also leaving SSI, and you don't necessarily want them. And let's see, Nikki, you asked about the student earned income. You can Google that, but let me just pop back there real quick and tell you those numbers again. So yeah, the SEIE exclusions are $1,900 per month, up to a total of $7,670 per year. And again, those are the numbers for 2020. They change every year. So you can always just Google that and look that up. It pops right up when you do that. Because I know, because I have to do it every year when I make my presentations. I have to Google what are the numbers for 2020. Okay, so.
Could I ask a clarifying question?
Yes.
So does that include like high school age students who may be working?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It does, yes.
Thank you.
The last thing that I want to tell you about Medicaid 1619B is that they qualify for that as long as they don't earn over the state threshold amount. Now in 2019, that state threshold amount was $57,068. I'm pretty certain, yes, in fact, I'm 100% positive, we do have a number for 2020, but it's taped to a sticky on my screen in my office that I haven't seen for a month. So, and I forgot to Google it for this slide. I forgot that I still had the 2019, because they often don't update that number. They don't change the number until March. And by March, we were, well, my head wasn't in the game for a week or two, but also we were not in our offices anymore. So, so you can Google that amount, but it's over $57,000, right? That somebody can earn and still be eligible for Medicaid under 1619B. That's why I say it's such a powerful work incentive. Okay, and then I mentioned in passing, but there's another work incentive, and that is called Working Disabled Medicaid Buy-in. That one, you can work above the state threshold limit. It has a higher resource limit. Sometimes people actually switch to this one because it has a $10,000 resource limit as opposed to the $2,000 resource limit. So sometimes people find that to be of more value. With the ABLE Act, you know, you can put your money aside in terms of resources. You don't really have to worry about the resource limit as much anymore. And so I don't know if people are still finding it as valuable or not, but it is definitely a work incentive to be aware of. There is a small monthly premium they base it on. It's no more than 10% of a person's income, and often it's less than that. And I don't know their exact formula, but the Medicaid technicians figure that out for you. Okay, and once again, another work incentive for SSI that's also for SSDI is that expedited reinstatement of benefits, where if your earnings cause loss of entitlement to SSI, but then you stop working or your earning goes way down under SGA, there's that 5-year window where they can request the expedited reinstatement of benefits, and rather than going through a whole new application. And so that's pretty powerful as well. Okay, any questions on what we've covered so far? So I know it's a lot of information I've thrown at you, and we're kind of getting to the end. I want to just tell you just a little bit about ABLE, and then, but I do want to make sure that we get your questions answered, and I'll also make sure you have my contact information. Oh, I was going to show you this website. But let me tell you about it for right now. Well, actually, no, I am gonna try sharing my screen again. We'll see how that goes. Let's see. Let me try this. Okay. Okay. Remember somebody had the question about how that would impact adult public assistance. So I want to show you this website here. On the, can you guys see that now? The Disability Benefits 101? Okay. So really in a very fast overview, on this website, on the left-hand side of the website page are some articles. The articles are entitled Supplemental Security Income, SSI, and Adult Public Assistance. You can find lots of information under that. You can read that whole article, or you can skip around to the parts that interest you. There's an article on Social Security Disability Insurance, also a wealth of information. And then how health benefits work, look at different ways that you might be able to get health coverage. So there's some information in there. Finding the right health coverage for you is kind of more like an interactive tool where you can type in some information about your household size and your income and that kind of stuff, and it might pop up some healthcare coverage options. The other important part that I want to point out, let's see, yeah, okay. There's a box here that's new. It's the Corona's COVID-19 resources. There's been a lot of changes. So I don't know if those of you who know somebody who gets SSI are aware, but the stimulus payments, they went back and forth on this, and only just, I think it was just yesterday, we got kind of another update from Social Security saying, oh no, never mind, you don't have to apply, you don't have to go in and do anything. We're just going to automatically send it to you. So that was the latest I heard, is that SSI recipients will be receiving a check in the mail, and it will not be counted as income. So that's helpful. And I'm not sure, I can't remember what the latest thing was about the resource section. Like, in the first month it's looked at as income and they're not going to count it, but I'm not sure if that's true, if it's held in the account. So that would be something that you'd want to come to this website, which is the DB101. It's actually ak.db101.org. And then you can click on these links and look in here for the latest information. The other thing that I'm going to show you is this quick tools for professionals. Well, under this whole side, there's Get Expert Help. If you have a question about benefits and work, it takes you to the Alaska WIPA project, which is me. You click on that link, it takes you to the website, and it will give you my email address. This is my phone number. Supposedly, if you call that number, it rings right into my computer when I'm working. But email is a little bit more reliable. So I think if you click on the Alaska WIPA, it takes you to the website, and my email is on that website. And also Alex has it, so you can get it from her as well. If you have questions about SSI, SSDI, APA, Medicaid, all of these provide links to, and contact information to be able to get your questions answered. So this is a really great one-stop site to find all of those resources that you might need. Now I'm going to take you to this quick tools for professionals. And under the second one is SSI and APA benefit calculation. And I'm going to show you that benefit calculation that we just did. Okay. Remember Sandra, she was earning, she got a job. She's earning $950 a month. So she doesn't have any unearned income. See that step one, countable unearned income? She's not getting SSDI or a veteran's benefit or anything like that. So we're going to skip that step, okay? You come down to step two, countable earned income. Now this one we are going to do. This one is $950. And because we didn't use the $20 up above, it's automatically going to let us use it down here. So I put in that 950, look at it, just magically does all those calculations. It subtracts, it divides by 2. We get countable earned income of $432.50 a month. That's all Social Security is going to count. Then we go down to step 3, which is just adding countable unearned income, countable earned income, which we didn't have any countable unearned income, right? So the total countable income is still $432.50. Step 4 is where you see the maximum SSI benefit was $783. They subtracted that countable earned income or total countable income from that amount for an adjusted SSI benefit of $350.50, right? So, and then you can see that the APA benefit didn't change, right? It's still there. She would have to earn quite a bit of money before that started to change. And then it shows you here that with her APA, her adjusted SSI check, and her income, she's actually going to be earning $1,600 a month with all of that, right? So it's a really cool tool, super easy to use, and it gives you a good broad picture of income and how the wages impact benefits. So that's a really nice tool to use. And then at the bottom here, it says eligible for APA related Medicaid, which is kind of a misleading, I think, because really technically, as long as she's getting any SSI, she's on SSI Medicaid. And I don't know why they call it APA related, but in any case, it's a Medicaid. We'll be happy about that. Let's go back up here. I'm going to show you one more. We're going to go, she still has no unearned income, and we're going to just increase her income to $2,000. Let's see what happens if she gets $2,000 a month. Okay, now she's getting countable earned income of $957.50, right? That's dividing by 2, that's all that, right? How is that going to impact her check? Okay, well, it's going to take her SSI benefit to 0, right? But look, she's still getting an APA benefit. Because her SSI benefit went to 0, because of earned wages, she's eligible for that Medicaid category 1619B that I was telling you about that kind of puts a lock on Medicaid. But even if she wasn't, she would still be eligible for APA related Medicaid. So either way, she's covered. So it's a pretty nifty tool. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing because I want to make sure that I have time to answer questions. I did want to talk a little bit about the ABLE account. And I think the best way to do that is, let's see. Okay, so first of all, I see Rachel has her hand up. Has that been up for a while? I apologize if I wasn't paying attention. But Rachel Robinson, did you have another question? No?
I just have a
Okay.
clarifying question. So
Yes.
when calculating the income, it's based on the individual income, not the household? Or is it based
For
on the household?
SSI and adult public assistance, yes. It's based on the individual's income. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah, Rachel, sometimes it's not worth it to go back and fight with Social Security. Sometimes sometimes they make it worse, but at least you know now going forward that you have to actually apply for that. It's not automatic. So for the student earned income exclusion, there is paperwork. You can go to the Social Security website and you can Google student earned income exclusion, and there's paperwork for you to fill out. You have to fill out the name and address of the school. You have to, you know, answer some questions about how many hours worth of school programming there is. And you can look at that to see if you think that she might qualify under that. And then if she does, you fill that out and send it to Social Security when she's working. So just for future reference, that's a good idea. Okay. All right, I'm going to share my screen now, and I'm going to show you the ABLE account website. Oh, somehow I got the wrong website. Hold on. There we go. All right, this is the Alaskable Plan website. So if you want to know more about ABLE, come to this website. Now, I see that again, there's an important coronavirus update at the very top of the page, so you might want to look at that. The very first tab, this is interesting. This website isn't acting right. So there's a tab, there's the home page, and then there's the tab called Plan Benefits. And the Plan Benefits has a lot of information on it. I'm just showing you guys this quickly. And the website is savewithable.com/AK. Will get you there. Okay. And so this has a lot of the information about the ABLE plan on there on that first tab of Plan Benefits. It also has at the bottom of that page, well, it talks about what are qualified disability expenses. In other words, what can you spend that money on once you put it in there, right? There's a lot of things, and they use very broad categories because they don't want to limit. They don't want to actually limit any more than they have to. I know that you cannot spend it on alcohol or gambling. That's about all I know. And then at the bottom are frequently asked questions. So you can go in and click through those. There's also the second tab is investment options. And that's really talks a little bit about the banking option and then about the investment options, which right now I don't think anybody's interested in investing. So we won't spend much time there. The most important thing though, there's always the contact us, and they are super helpful. I've never had to really wait very long to get them, they answer right away, and they usually know the answer to something. And then there's the forms, which is where you can find forms that you can use to do things with your account, either to set up the account or to do other things. And then at the bottom, you can see in little tiny print at the very bottom, it says Plan Disclosure Document. And that document, don't download it and save it to your computer because it does change occasionally. And it's 124 pages. So I would always pull it up fresh so that you know you're getting the most current plan. And right now, the last time this was changed was in October of 2018. But it has all sorts of information. It's 124 pages of information. So you can read through that, and then any questions you have that didn't get answered, you can go to that Contact Us tab and you can call them and ask your questions. Okay, I don't know, can you guys see the plan document? Is that showing up for you? No? Okay, that's all right. It's just a big long document, 124 pages, so no big deal.